Buddha and the Lessons of Impermanence, A Journey of Change. 1. Introduction. The Weary Heart of Dhanaka. In the ancient kingdom of Shravasti, where the gentle murmur of the Ganges mingled with the songs of temple bells, there lived a wealthy merchant named Dhanaka. His fortune was vast, his estates flourished, his caravans prospered, and his name was synonymous with success. Yet, behind the veneer of opulence lay a heart burdened by deep, unspoken fear. Every night, as the stars glimmered over his marble courtyard, Dhanaka's mind was assailed by the thought of change. What if his wealth vanished? What if his loved ones grew distant or were taken away by fate? Amid the glitter of gold and the comfort of luxury, he felt a quiet emptiness, a gnawing anxiety that nothing in this world was permanent. One crisp autumn morning, as the leaves of the Bodhi tree whispered ancient secrets, Dhanaka resolved to seek the counsel of the Buddha, whose wisdom had long been a beacon for troubled souls. With a heavy heart but a hopeful spirit, he set out on the long, winding road to the nearby monastery where the enlightened master resided. When he arrived, Dhanaka was greeted not by pomp, but by the calm serenity of a humble gathering. Monks in simple robes sat cross-legged on the courtyard floor, their eyes reflecting the light of inner peace. In the midst of this gentle assembly, the Buddha sat quietly under the shade of a large banyan tree. His presence was at once both commanding and tender, radiating an aura of compassion that seemed to embrace every living being. Approaching with trepidation, Dhanaka bowed deeply before the Buddha and spoke in a trembling voice. "Blessed One, I have all that a man could desire, wealth, influence, and respect, but I am tormented by the thought that these too shall vanish. I live in constant fear of losing what I hold dear. Please, guide me in finding peace." The Buddha's eyes softened, and his voice, as calm as a still lake, answered, "Dhanaka, your wealth may fill your coffers, but it is your heart that feels the weight of impermanence. Come, walk with me." Thus began a journey that would lead Dhanaka to understand the very nature of change, a journey that would illuminate the impermanence of all things and reveal how true peace comes from embracing life's ceaseless flow. 2. The story of the changing river. The Buddha led Dhanaka through a winding path until they reached the banks of the mighty Achiravati River. The water, swift and unceasing, gushed over rocks and through reeds, its surface sparkling in the morning light. The Buddha gestured toward the river and said, "Observe this water, Dhanaka. Does it not change with every moment?" Dhanaka watched intently as the current ebbed and flowed. "Indeed, Lord," he replied, "the water is never the same twice. It moves, shifts, and transforms constantly." The Buddha nodded gently. "Just as this river flows, so does life. Everything in this world is subject to change, your wealth, your relationships, and even your own body. This is the nature of impermanence, known as anicca. If you try to hold on to the water with your hands, it will slip away. Clinging to anything that is bound to change brings only suffering." Dhanaka's eyes searched the tranquil face of the river. "But Lord, if nothing lasts, how can we find security in anything at all?" "Security is found not in the external, but within the understanding of this very truth," the Buddha replied. "When you accept that all things are transient, you learn to cherish each moment as it comes, without the burden of expectation or the fear of loss." As the river roared on, its waters dancing in a relentless, ever-changing rhythm, Dhanaka felt the first stirrings of understanding. The river's eternal flow had begun to whisper to him that life's beauty was found in its very impermanence. 3. The Tale of the Fading Lotus Garden. That very evening, as twilight painted the sky in hues of orange and pink, the Buddha invited Dhanaka to sit by a small bonfire. As the flames flickered and the night grew cool, the Buddha began to recount a parable, a story within the story that had been passed down through generations. Long ago, in a far-off kingdom, the Buddha began, there ruled a king renowned for his wisdom and beauty. This king, enamored with the delicate splendor of a lotus garden, spared no expense in cultivating it. The garden was his pride, a marvel of nature meticulously preserved, each lotus petal gleaming like a gem. Yet, despite his best efforts, the blooms would fade and the garden's vibrancy would wane with the passing seasons. The king, desperate to halt this inevitable decline, sought the counsel of a sage. "Tell me," he pleaded, "how may I preserve the beauty of my garden forever?" The sage, a humble wanderer, replied, "O king, the beauty of the lotus is born from its impermanence. It blooms, radiates splendor, and then gracefully withers, giving way to new life. In your attempt to hold on to beauty, you deny it its natural cycle. True appreciation comes when you embrace the fleeting nature of each blossom." The king, struck by the sage's words, realized that his relentless desire to immortalize beauty had blinded him to its natural, transient charm. Instead of resisting change, he began to celebrate each moment as a unique manifestation of nature's artistry. The lotus garden, now appreciated for its ephemeral beauty, became a symbol of the profound truth of impermanence, and the kingdom was filled with a newfound sense of peace and gratitude. As the Buddha finished the parable, Dhanaka sat in silent contemplation. The story of the fading lotus garden resonated deeply within him. Here was a living reminder that even the most cherished things, like the delicate blooms of a lotus, must eventually fade, and that there is beauty in every phase of their existence. 4. The lesson of the dying tree. The next day, the Buddha arranged for Dhanaka to meet a young monk named Suman. Although Suman had joined the Sangha only a few years earlier, he struggled with his own inner turmoil. Deep within, he longed to cling to the vigor and youth of his early days, resisting the natural progression of aging. Suman's eyes were often filled with a quiet sadness, as if mourning the loss of something he could never reclaim. Together, the Buddha and Dhanaka visited a venerable tree that had stood at the edge of the monastery for centuries. Its bark was rugged, and its branches bowed gracefully, bearing the marks of time. The Buddha touched the trunk and said, "Suman, behold this tree. In its lifetime, it has weathered countless seasons, each bringing its own changes. Yet it stands resilient, adapting to the rhythms of life." Suman's eyes traced the grooves and scars along the tree's bark. "I see, Lord. I have clung to the memory of my youth, wishing that time would pause so I could remain unchanged. I fear the inevitable decay of my body, and in that fear, I cannot fully embrace the present." The Buddha's voice was as gentle as a whisper on the wind. "Consider the tree, Suman. It does not mourn the loss of its blossoms, nor grieve for the fallen leaves. Instead, it accepts each phase of its life with quiet dignity. In the shedding of old leaves, it makes space for new growth. Embrace your own nature and understand that aging is not a curse, but a natural process of renewal. When you let go of clinging to youth, you open yourself to the profound beauty of each moment." As Suman listened, the realization began to dawn upon him. Just as the tree found strength in its natural cycles, so too could he find liberation in accepting the inevitable changes of life. The lesson of the dying tree had sown a seed of wisdom in his heart, a seed that would one day blossom into a deeper understanding of impermanence. 5. The story of the lost kingdom. In the following weeks, the Buddha took Dhanaka on many journeys, each designed to illuminate the many facets of impermanence. One such journey led them to a remote region where tales of a lost kingdom were still whispered by the wind. There, the Buddha recounted the story of Prince Harivansh. Long ago, in a kingdom of splendor and might, there lived a young prince named Harivansh. His realm was vast, his people prosperous, and his power unquestioned. Yet the prince was consumed by an insatiable desire for permanence. He believed that his kingdom would stand invincible forever, immune to the ravages of time and fortune. But fate, as it often does, had other plans. A great calamity, a fierce invasion coupled with a devastating plague, swept through the land. The mighty walls of the kingdom crumbled, and its once glorious palaces were reduced to ruins. In the aftermath, Prince Harivansh wandered amidst the desolation, his heart heavy with regret. "Had I known," he lamented, "that even kingdoms fall, would I have clung so desperately to my power?" In the solitude of his loss, the prince encountered a wise hermit who lived among the ruins. The hermit spoke softly. "O prince, no worldly power, no matter how grand, can escape the law of impermanence. Your kingdom was like a sandcastle by the sea, beautiful yet destined to be reclaimed by the tides of time. Only by embracing the transient nature of life can you truly appreciate its fleeting beauty." Prince Harivansh, now a humble wanderer, embarked on a journey of inner discovery. Over time, he learned to let go of his former attachments, finding solace in the realization that true strength lies in adaptability and in the acceptance that every loss gives way to new beginnings. Danica listened to the story with rapt attention. The fall of Prince. Harivansh's kingdom mirrored his own internal struggle. Just as the mighty kingdom had crumbled under the weight of its own attachments, so too might his fortunes vanish if he remained ensnared in the fear of change. The lesson was clear. Clinging to the illusion of permanence only brings sorrow. Embracing the inevitable ebb and flow of life is the path to true resilience. 6. Facing Death. The story of Kisagotami. One quiet morning, as the mist still clung to the valley and the world lay hushed in the pre-dawn calm, the Buddha shared with Danica one of the most poignant tales of impermanence. The story of Kisagotami. Kisagotami was a mother whose heart overflowed with love for her only child. One day, fate dealt her a cruel blow. The child fell ill, and despite all efforts, he passed away. Overwhelmed by grief, Kisagotami wandered through the streets, clutching her child's tiny garment, desperate to find a way to restore his life. In her anguish, she approached the Buddha, pleading, "Please, Blessed One, can you bring my child back to life?" The Buddha, with deep compassion in his eyes, replied, "I understand your pain, but death is as natural as birth. I can offer you a task. Go to the town and gather a mustard seed from a household that has never known loss, and I will restore your child." Filled with hope, Kisagotami went from door to door. However, as she knocked on each door, she was met with sorrowful nods and whispered tales of loss. No household, she discovered, was untouched by grief. Every family had known the sting of loss in one form or another. In that moment, a profound truth revealed itself to Kisagotami. Impermanence and loss are intrinsic to the human experience. With tears streaming down her face, she realized that clinging to her child was a denial of life's natural cycle. The Buddha's gentle wisdom echoed in her heart. By accepting the inevitability of death, one can begin to heal and truly appreciate the gift of every moment. Kisagotami's transformation was not immediate. Her grief would be a lifelong companion, yet she came to understand that in the acceptance of loss lay the seed of rebirth. Just as the lotus blooms anew from the mud, so too can the heart heal and find beauty after sorrow. The story of Kisagotami struck a deep chord in Danica. He saw in her journey a mirror of his own hidden fears. Every time he thought of losing his wealth, his status, or his loved ones, he recalled the poignant truth that life is a tapestry woven with both joy and sorrow. Embracing loss rather than resisting it allowed the possibility of renewal and the emergence of a deeper, more resilient peace. 7. Donika's realization. Weeks turned into months, and Donika's journey of understanding impermanence grew richer with each passing day. The Buddha's teachings had begun to transform his perspective on life. No longer did he see change as a harbinger of loss, but rather as a natural, essential rhythm of existence. One crisp morning, as the sun rose over the distant hills and painted the sky with golden hues, Donika sat beneath the same banyan tree where he had first met the Buddha. In the quiet solitude, he reflected on the lessons he had learned. The changing river, the fading lotus garden, the dying tree, the lost kingdom, and the story of Kisagotami. Each story was like a drop of water merging into the vast ocean of wisdom that was impermanence. In that reflective moment, Donika realized that his fear had always been rooted in attachment. He had clung desperately to the fleeting, trying to grasp onto something that was destined to change. But now he understood that true peace lay in letting go, accepting the transient nature of all things, and finding joy in the ever-unfolding present. He recalled the Buddha's gentle words by the river. If you try to hold on, you only suffer. If you learn to flow with life, you find peace. With newfound clarity, Donika embraced the impermanence of his own life. He began to live in each moment with mindfulness and gratitude, appreciating the beauty of a sunrise, the laughter of children, and even the gentle sorrow that sometimes accompanied the night. No longer burdened by the fear of loss, Donika transformed his relationships and his outlook. He shared his wealth freely, not out of attachment to material things, but as a celebration of life's abundant impermanence. His business dealings became more compassionate, his interactions more heartfelt. Friends and family noticed a change, a quiet, radiant joy that had replaced the anxious glimmer that once shone in his eyes. Donika's inner transformation did not mean he was indifferent to loss. Rather, he had learned to welcome change as part of the natural cycle. Each challenge became an opportunity for growth, each ending a precursor to a new beginning. In embracing impermanence, he found a liberation that no amount of material wealth could ever provide. 8. Conclusion. The final words of the Buddha. As the seasons continued to change, the lessons of impermanence became woven into the very fabric of Donika's life. On a serene evening, with the first stars emerging in the twilight sky, Donika once again sought the counsel of the Buddha. Under the same banyan tree where his journey had begun, he bowed before the enlightened master and said, "Lord, through your teachings, I have learned to embrace the ever-changing nature of life. I now see that in letting go, I have found a freedom that was always within me." The Buddha smiled warmly, his eyes reflecting the deep compassion of one who had witnessed countless souls find their way. "Donika," he said softly, "the understanding of impermanence is not merely an intellectual exercise, but a way of living. It is the realization that all things, no matter how grand or trivial, are transient. In this truth lies both the source of suffering and the path to liberation. When you accept that change is inevitable, you free yourself from the chains of attachment and open your heart to the boundless beauty of life." He paused, allowing the weight of his words to settle in the cool night air. Remember, my dear friend, every moment is a precious gift precisely because it is fleeting. The changing river, the fading lotus, the dying tree, the lost kingdom, and even the sorrow of loss, all these are the threads that weave the tapestry of existence. Embrace them, and you will discover that peace is not found in clinging to what is temporary, but in celebrating the eternal dance of change. Donika closed his eyes, feeling the profound truth of the Buddha's words resonate deep within his soul. In that moment, the fear that had once tormented him seemed to dissolve, replaced by a serene acceptance of life as it was, a beautiful, ever-changing journey. From that day forward, Donica became a living testament to the transformative power of embracing impermanence. His story spread throughout Sravasti and beyond, inspiring many to see change not as a threat, but as a natural, liberating part of the human experience. In his newfound freedom, Donica lived each day with gratitude, his heart open to every joy and sorrow, knowing that both were integral to the vast, beautiful cycle of life. Epilogue. The Eternal Flow. In the years that followed, as Donica's hair turned silver and his steps slowed, he often returned to the banks of the Ashiravati River, sitting quietly by its ever-changing waters. In the gentle murmur of the current, he found the echoes of the Buddha's wisdom, a reminder that impermanence is not a harbinger of despair, but a call to live fully in each precious moment. The river, with its ceaseless flow, continued to mirror the truth that nothing in life is fixed. And so, as the seasons turned and time wove its intricate tapestry, Donica's heart remained ever light, buoyed by the understanding that change was not the end, but the very essence of life's eternal dance. For in accepting impermanence, one finds the strength to let go of what must fade and the wisdom to welcome the new with open arms. A lesson as timeless as the flowing river and as profound as the quiet compassion of the Buddha.